He froze when he saw the fading purple bruise beneath her left eye, because in his mansion, no one touched what belonged to him. But the fear in her eyes told him this wound ran far deeper than violence. Amina moved through the Moretti house the way a shadow moves through a church, reverent, careful, as if loud footsteps might disturb something fragile. Morning light found its way through high windows and landed in golden bars across the floor. The rooms breathed a hush that had been earned by generations. She had been taught to listen for the sighs in furniture, the microbreaths of a house that belonged to someone else. She worked with ritual, the polish that turned the banister into a mirror, the slow attention to linen, to collars starched to an exact edge. Her hands remembered what her mouth would not say. When she folded sheets, she folded away a memory too, a slap that had landed years ago in a room with different wallpaper, a hand that had left the shape of fear on her cheek. She had learned to hide the maps that pain left across skin. That morning she tugged on a long-sleeved blouse, not because the weather demanded it, but because sleeves were better than answers. Amina's name was small on the household roster. Housekeeper, maid, Amina, said quickly, politely, as if the syllables might inconvenience. She liked the kitchen best. The clatter of pans gave her something honest to focus on. The kettle hissed in a familiar way. The thin steam smelled of bergamot and lemon peel. She hummed under her breath, a melody from home, and it was the only voice she let in the rooms where the portraits watched. She kept one small defiant thing, her laugh. It came out in short bursts when she was alone, when the marble did not judge. The laughter was brittle but real. She allowed herself a moment of it while rolling out pastry. A child's face floated up from the memory pool, a nephew who thought she could conjure sunshine, and her hand trembled as she brushed flour across a wooden board. Across town, in a private club that smelled of cigar smoke and old money, Enzo Valenti moved through his empire with the same cautious ritual, but his silence was made of steel. They called him by nicknames that bent around fear: the Don, the Quiet One, Enzo. Men deferred. Women watched the way he wore a suit like a second skin, precise, well-cut, the sort of tailoring that made angles obey. He kept a rosewood desk in his office, and on it an old photograph in a silver frame, his mother, laughing with a man who had a softer jaw. When he looked at it, something almost moved in his chest, and he pushed the feeling away like a loose dog. Enzo's world was measured in ledgers and loyalties. He walked halls that hummed with history, contracts in black folders, eyes that told him the worth of things no one could put on a ledger. He had built walls of marble and men who could carry a whisper into dangerous places. And still, there were evenings he would sit alone in a dark dining room and listen to the house breathe around him, forced into a rhythm of a life people imagined glamorous but that tasted like iron. This morning, he let the light find him in a room with a view of the city, a smear of rooftops and distant taxis. He did not like surprises. Surprises were problems that could not be placed under a microscope. So he kept everything fixed, a schedule, a set of faces that moved through tasks like clockwork. Amina was one such face, efficient, silent, always present but never seen. He had noticed the way she smoothed tablecloths with exaggerated care, the way she hesitated at his office door as if the handle itself might ask questions. Enzo rose from his chair the way a king would, slow, decisive. He had a meeting at noon, stock to move, favors to collect. The world required his attention. He had no time for stories that tugged at personal threads. Yet something in him had begun to notice. Small items out of place, a cup not where it should be, the faint smell of someone else's perfume in a coat drawer. It irritated him, then lodged under his skin like a splinter he could not reach. Amina worked in a rhythm of small kindnesses that went unnoticed by the tabloids and the men who whispered in the club. She refilled the coffer of sugar for the afternoon tea, arranged the silver on a tray the way the family liked it, 2 spoons, 1 small sugar tongs, lemon slice wrapped in gauze to keep it perfect. She moved through the house with a humility that had been taught to her by necessity, but inside she kept a fierce private pride. She was good at making other people's lives ordered. That was a power too, if no one asked its price. She paused in the corridor when she heard his voice behind the office door, low and curt. He had a reputation for being brusque to keep intimacy at bay. Her palms went cold. She pressed the tray to her hip. The bruise on her cheek burned like a secret. She had hoped the light wouldn't find it. Enzo had told her once, in a tone that was more curiosity than command, to always bring things in on a silver tray. Presentation matters, he had said, and she had obeyed. He could be oddly particular about negligible things. Perhaps that mattered because it gave him a foothold on a predictable world. When she pushed the door open, the room smelled of old paper and rain on hot asphalt, a city that never quite slept. Enzo looked up. He was a storm in tailored clothing, a man whose face had been mapped by experience. He did not smile often. His eyes were a dark topaz of a color that did not let you read him easily. He had been expecting tea. Instead he watched Amina's hand steady on the tray and then, almost by accident, the angle of her head caught the light. For a heartbeat he did not move. The rest of the world paused at the hinge of that moment. Beneath the fine skin of her left eye a faint purple bloom hid like a pressed flower. It was the kind of mark that told a story without a word. Amina felt the air shift like a hand sliding across her spine. She kept her voice even. "Your tea, sir." The title was automatic, trained into muscle. Enzo's mouth tightened. He noticed everything: the set of a jaw, the way fingers curled when someone lied, the oxygen in a room. He had a list in his head of things one did not tolerate in his house: theft, treachery, gossip. Abuse was not on his list because he had lived a life where rules were different. But when a bruise announced itself in the quiet of his office, his body betrayed him, his protector muscle flexed. He was supposed to be unmoved. He surprised himself by saying, soft and low, "Amina, come closer." She set the tray down. Her pulse did a small, traitorous dance. The house felt suddenly too loud: the tick of a clock, the hum of the fridge, the distant city. She took a breath that tasted like metal. "You weren't in the kitchen when I went through the papers," Enzo said, not unkind, but with a weight that suggested he had noticed more than the bruise. She could have told him nothing. She could have kept to the silence that had protected her all these years. Instead, the bruise seemed larger under his gaze. Amina's fingers tightened on the edge of the tray until white knuckles threatened porcelain. She met his eyes, and for a sliver of a moment something in her that had been locked for years loosened. The house held both their breaths, and the world outside of it, so loud, so indifferent, fell away. He saw fear in the way she swallowed, not the indignation of someone who expected pity, nor the performance of someone seeking compassion. This was different. It was shame and exhaustion braided together. Enzo lifted a hand, as if tasting the air, and then lowered it. "Coffee later," he said. "There's a meeting." But, he stopped. The word unfinished trembled between them like glass. "Make sure you take lunch." "You take lunch, yes." Amina wanted to say that she always took lunch, that she always did what was asked. Instead, she nodded. The bruise warmed beneath his attention as if lit from the inside. He watched her go, and as the door closed he felt the tug of something unfamiliar: responsibility maybe, or a raw, sudden need to know that the people inside his walls were safe. The bruise had broken something in the quiet, and that break was the sound of two worlds beginning to tilt toward one another. Before we step inside the marble and the quiet, tell me in the comments, if you saw a bruise like that on someone you care for, would you ask, or would you keep quiet? The house felt different the next morning, charged, alert, as if its walls remembered the bruise even when no one spoke of it. Rain whispered against tall windows, blurring the city beyond into shades of silver and wet blue. Amina arrived early, as she always did, her coat damp from the walk. She paused in the entry hall, inhaling the familiar scent of cedar polish, lavender cleaner, and something uniquely Valenti, the quiet hum of power hiding in elegance. She didn't want to be seen today. She had tried covering the bruise with makeup, but the skin was stubborn tender. The concealment only made it look angrier. She tied her hair low, hoping shadows would do what powder couldn't. She set to work in the kitchen, keeping her head down as she chopped mint, cracked eggs, and whisked batter for the staff breakfast. She moved quickly, too quickly, and nearly knocked a bowl from the counter. Her hand shook. She clenched it at her apron. A footstep sounded behind her. Not fast or heavy, measured. Intentional. Her spine went rigid. She turned, expecting one of the other workers. Instead, Enzo Valenti stood at the doorway. Still wearing the clothes from last night's late meeting. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled. The kind of look that made his authority seem effortless, ingrained. His hair was slightly tousled, the result of a hand raking through it in frustration or thought. The early light carved sharp lines across his face, pooling in the edges of his eyes. She froze. Her breath lodged in her throat. Enzo's gaze swept the kitchen, the counter, the scattered ingredients, and finally her. The bruise was no longer subtle in the morning light. It lived there on her skin like a confession. She dropped her eyes, almost bowing. "Good morning, sir, your coffee will be." Amina. Just her name. Soft, but with an undertone that demanded truth. She swallowed. Yes, sir. He stepped forward, not too close, not intrusive, but close enough that she could smell faint traces of rain and cedar clinging to his shirt. His voice dropped to something quieter, heavier. Look at me. She hesitated. Then she obeyed, lifting her chin slowly, painfully. Her heartbeat thudded in her throat. The bruise stared back at him. The moment stretched into a living thing, thick, slow, undeniable. Enzo exhaled through his nose, not in anger but something deeper, control breaking. Who did that to you? She blinked, startled. Sir, I fell. It was an accident. Don't insult me. His voice cut the air like silk-wrapped steel. I've seen every kind of lie a person can craft. That one is beneath you. Amina's hands trembled. She hid them in her apron. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't threatening. That made it more terrifying. With careful restraint, he reached for a chair and slid it toward her. Sit. She shook her head quickly. I'm fine. Truly. Amina. This time her name landed like a command softened by worry. Sit. Her knees gave way before she could protest further, and she lowered herself onto the chair. Her breath shook as she tried to keep her composure. Memories flickered, door slams, raised fists, bruises blooming along with fear. She pressed her palms into her thighs, grounding herself. Enzo lowered himself to her level, crouching so he could see her eyes directly. The boss, kneeling. If anyone else saw this, the underworld would shake. His voice gentled, surprising even himself. Tell me who hurt you. She bit her lip. Hard. The metal taste of blood teased her tongue. And no one. I just. You didn't do anything. His eyes tightened. There are 3 kinds of bruises: accident, self-inflicted, and caused by someone else. Yours sits high on the cheekbone. Defensive injury? Someone grabbed you. Someone struck you. Someone. Please stop. Her whisper cracked as if the fear itself had split open. She shook her head, breath stuttering. I don't want trouble. He leaned closer, but not enough to crowd her. You won't get in trouble. A beat. I will. For a moment, time didn't move. A car passed outside. A kettle hissed quietly behind them. Amina stared at him, really stared, and realized something unsettling. He was not angry at her. He was angry for her. She blinked quickly, tears threatening the edges of her eyes. She clenched her jaw, choking them back. She didn't want pity. She didn't want attention. I can handle it, she whispered. Enzo's brow lowered. No. You've been handling it alone for too long. The sentence hit her harder than any strike she'd endured. Her chest tightened. Something inside her, some old aching thing, woke up and began to tremble. He reached out slowly, like someone approaching a wounded animal afraid of hands. May I? He asked. The words stunned her. May I? A mafia boss. Asking permission. For something as delicate as touching her chin. Amina nodded, barely. His fingertips brushed the edge of her jaw, featherlight but burning through her composure. He tilted her face gently, examining the bruise with silent fury and unexpected tenderness. You deserve better than this. His voice was gravel softened by warmth. She closed her eyes, breath shaking. You deserve safety. A pause. And anyone who put that fear in your eyes, his voice darkened, will answer to me. Her eyes shot open. No. Please, you don't understand. If you get involved, things will get worse. I can't have anyone fighting for me. That's not my life. He held her gaze. It is now. She stared at him, stunned into stillness. He stood, the decision already made in his posture. The storm behind his eyes had settled into resolve. You're under my protection, he said simply. Her heart hammered. But why? He studied her for a long moment. Then softly, yet with a depth that made her breath catch. Because someone finally saw you, Amina. Her lips parted, but no words came. The world around her felt suspended, unreal. He stepped back, straightened his shirt, and adjusted the cuff of his sleeve as if sealing a vow. This ends today. The room held its breath. Amina's life, quiet, small, controlled, shifted on its axis. And the world of Enzo Valenti, a world built on fear, strength, and untouchable power, had just collided with compassion in a way that shocked even him. Everything was about to change. Before we continue, would you tell someone the truth if they asked about your pain, or would you hide it like Amina? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your view might help someone reading. Amina barely slept. Not because of the bruise or the lingering sting beneath her eye, but because of his words, "You're under my protection. It ends today." They echoed in her mind like footsteps in an empty hallway. No one had ever said something like that to her. No one had ever offered to stand between her and danger. And certainly not him, the man everyone else feared. Her alarm rang before dawn, and she forced herself out of bed with the heavy drag of someone preparing for a fight they never asked for. She wrapped a scarf around her head, hoping it would hide the bruise more effectively, and walked to the Moretti mansion with her heart thumping like a quiet drum of dread. The house was silent when she entered. Too silent. Rain from last night still clung to the windows, casting a soft gray light that made the marble floors shine like dim mirrors. She moved cautiously from room to room, cleaning faster than usual, glancing at each doorway as if expecting Enzo to appear. Because she needed to talk to him. She needed to stop him. Before he did something that would ruin everything, for him, for her, for anyone connected to her life outside these walls. But Enzo did not appear. Not in the dining room. Not in his office. Not in the hallway where he usually signed paperwork at sunrise. The quiet only deepened her worry. By the time the clock in the foyer struck 8, her nerves were raw. Enzo Valenti stood in the garage alone, leaning against the hood of a black Maserati. His jaw was tight, his hand tapping rhythmically on the metal. He had been up since 4 a.m., not because he couldn't sleep, but because he knew himself too well. If he saw Amina first, he would lose what little restraint he had. He needed space to cool his anger, sharpen his thinking, and approach the matter with strategy rather than impulse. He was not a man who rushed into emotion. He was a man who planned. But even in planning, Amina's face kept intruding. The tenderness. The fear. The bruise blooming like a warning. He inhaled deeply, grounding himself. Today he would find out who hurt her. Who dared lay a hand on a woman working under his roof. Who carved fear into her features. And he would end it. He had returned to the mansion mid-morning. She heard footsteps in the corridor, heavy but controlled, and her pulse flickered. She turned the corner and almost collided into him. His hand steadied her without thinking. She flinched, not from him, but from memory. That small reaction stabbed something deep in Enzo. His hand dropped instantly, giving her space. Amina. His tone was steady, but something in it had softened since yesterday. We need to talk. No, she said quickly, surprising both of them. No, sir. I need to talk to you. Her voice was trembling but determined. Enzo looked at her fully. Go on. I don't need protection, she blurted. Please. Don't get involved in my personal matters. It's not your responsibility. He stared at her a beat too long. Not my responsibility, he echoed, almost disbelieving. Someone is hurting you. And I can handle it, she insisted, though her eyes betrayed her. No, he said quietly, firmly. You can endure it. That's not the same thing. She froze. He took a careful step forward, not threatening but resolute. You think keeping silent keeps you safe, he said. But silence only keeps them safe. Amina swallowed hard, her throat thickening. She wanted to deny it. Wanted to argue. Wanted to retreat into the quiet life she'd built for herself, where she was invisible, unnoticed, unprotected. But she could not find the words. He continued, voice low and controlled. If you don't tell me who hurt you, I'll find out myself. You know I can. Terror flashed across her features before she could hide it. He saw it. And that alone told him everything. Amina, he said more softly, is it someone from inside this house? No, she breathed immediately. So, outside. His jaw clenched. Someone who thinks they can put their hands on you without consequence. Her breath hitched. Her silence answered him. Enzo exhaled, running a hand through his hair in frustration. You're afraid. I get that. But I won't let that fear keep you in danger. Not here. Not under my roof. She shook her head again, stepping back. You don't understand. If you get involved, there will be retaliation. And you don't know them. Her voice cracked. They are not scared of anyone. A dark, humorless smile ghosted across Enzo's lips. Amina, people who aren't scared of anyone, haven't met me yet. Her heart stuttered. He meant it. Every syllable. That scared her more than anything. She pushed back her fear, lifting her chin. Please. I'm begging you. Just leave it alone. Leave me alone. Nothing good will come from this. Enzo stepped closer, slowly, controlled, until their eyes aligned. You're wrong, he murmured. Her breath caught. Good will come from this. Because I'm not walking away. Not now. Her hands shook. Why? Why do you care? The answer came instantly, too honest, too raw. Because someone hurt you, he said. And I felt something I haven't felt in years. She stared. What was that? She whispered. Rage, he said softly. And something else I'm not ready to name. Her knees weakened. He didn't touch her. Didn't crowd her. He simply stood there, letting her feel the weight of his sincerity. She had never had anyone stand with her. It terrified her. It comforted her. It confused her. And so, she did the only thing she knew how to do when life became too big. She ran. Not literally. But she stepped past him, bowed her head and murmured, I have chores to finish, sir, before disappearing into the hallway with shaky breaths. Enzo didn't follow. Not because he didn't want to. But because he had learned something crucial. She wasn't resisting him. She was resisting the idea of being protected. Of being cared for. Of being worth more than survival. Enzo watched the spot where she'd stood moments ago, then whispered to the empty corridor. I'll earn your trust, Amina. Even if you fight me every step. And far from him in the laundry room, Amina leaned against the dryer, trembling, whispering to herself. Please, don't make me hope. Before we go deeper, if someone promised to protect you but you feared the consequences, would you accept their help, or push them away like Amina? The storm arrived early. Not the gentle kind that drummed softly against windows. This one came with the fury of a sky torn open. Rain fell in violent sheets, thunder shook the gutters, and wind slapped the towering glass panels of the Valenti mansion as if trying to break inside. Amina stood in the staff kitchen, staring out at the chaos, clutching a stack of freshly folded towels to her chest. She hated storms. Not because of the thunder, but because storms sounded like memories. Doors slammed in anger, shouts muffled by walls, fists hitting surfaces. Her heart raced. She tried to breathe through it, in, out, steady, but the past had a way of pulling her backward. A loud crack of thunder snapped her nerves like thin glass. She dropped the towels. Amina. Her body jerked. She turned. Enzo stood in the doorway, rainwater on his shoulders and hair from having stepped out briefly earlier in the afternoon. He was soaked from the storm, his button-down clinging slightly to his chest and arms. His presence filled the room in a way the thunder couldn't, still, heavy, magnetic. We lost power on the east wing, he said. I need someone to help light the backup lamps. Amina blinked, stunned. And me? He nodded. You know the house better than anyone. That wasn't true. Plenty of staff did. But the way he said it, quiet, certain, trusting, left her with no space to argue. She swallowed. Yes, sir. He handed her a small flashlight. Stay close. The storm's pulling the security sensors offline. Her stomach dipped. Storms always made the mansion feel too big, too hollow. And now, she would be walking it alone with him. Darkness swallowed them. The only illumination came from the soft white beam of the flashlight in her shaking hand. Enzo, noticing the tremor, gently took the flashlight and positioned himself slightly in front of her. Follow me, he said. I won't let you get lost. Not lost in the dark. Not lost in her fear. Not lost in life. The way he said it made her chest tighten painfully. They walked through the hall, the storm's growls rolling above them like a living thing. The house creaked under the wind, and Amina felt every old scar in her memory flare. She hugged her arms around herself, trying to hide her shaking. But Enzo saw. He stopped. Turned to face her. "Amina," he said quietly, "you're trembling." She opened her mouth, a denial on the tip of her tongue, but another thunderclap shook the air, louder, deeper, and the words died. She flinched so hard she bumped into his chest. His hands instinctively steadied her arms. "Hey," he murmured, softer than she had ever heard him speak. "It's just a storm." "No," she whispered, surprising herself. "It's not." His eyes shifted, from concern to understanding to anger at whoever made storms more frightening than fists. "Come with me," he said after a heartbeat. She hesitated. Where? Somewhere safer. She had never been allowed inside. Staff usually treated this room like sacred ground. Only the Don's most trusted associates ever entered. But today, he opened the door for her as if she belonged there. Inside, warm shadows wrapped the room. Heavy shelves lined the walls, filled with books and rare artifacts. A massive antique chandelier hung above them, unlit in the outage. Enzo crossed to a cabinet and retrieved a set of lanterns, real flame ones. He handed one to her. "Sit," he said softly. She perched on the edge of a leather sofa, uncertain, her hand squeezing the lantern's handle. Enzo lit the wick of the lantern she held. It cast a soft amber glow across her face, and her bruise. His jaw took on that familiar, simmering tension. Amina lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He blinked, stunned. "For what?" "For everything. For bothering you. For making you concerned." He knelt in front of her, the second time he had knelt, and yet it still felt unbelievable. "You think you're a burden to me?" She trembled. "I think people like you aren't supposed to care." That hit him harder than thunder. He sat beside her, but not too close. "Just enough. That's what they taught you," he said quietly. "To expect nothing. To be nothing to everyone." Her throat tightened. Lightning flashed, illuminating the bruise like a truth too big for shadows. He turned to her. "Amina, who taught you to be afraid of being cared for?" Her lips parted. No sound came out. Her hands shook. He didn't push. Didn't demand. Instead, he spoke gently. "You're safe here. With me. Nothing outside this room can touch you right now." His voice was a slow, grounding anchor. Thunder roared. The wind screamed. But his calm held the room steady. And Amina, exhausted, scared, emotionally frayed, felt something dangerous happening. She softened. "Please don't make me rely on you," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because if you change your mind," she swallowed hard, "I won't survive it." The room went utterly still. Enzo breathed out, a long, quiet exhale. "I don't change my mind," he said. "Not about things that matter." Her eyes glistened. "You don't even know me," she said, a single tear breaking loose. He reached up, slow, asking permission with his eyes, and brushed it away with the back of his knuckle. "That's what we're fixing tonight." Amina inhaled sharply, as if the words themselves shook her. A lantern flickered. The storm raged. The house trembled. But she and Enzo sat in a quiet bubble of warmth, slowly leaning into the emotional proximity they'd been resisting for days. She whispered, "Why are you being so kind to me?" He didn't hesitate. "Because someone should have been kind to you a long time ago." Her chest ached. Her breath shivered. And for the first time since she entered the mansion, she wasn't afraid of the darkness. She was afraid of what she was starting to feel, because she wasn't sure she could stop it. If circumstances trapped you with someone you were trying to avoid, someone who scared you and made you feel safe, would you open up, or shut down? The storm eased by midnight. Rain still pattered against the windows, but its fury had softened into a tired drizzle. The mansion, however, remained dark, humming quietly on backup power. Only the lanterns in Enzo's office cast warm pools of light that painted the room in shades of amber and gold. Amina sat curled at one end of the leather sofa, clutching her knees gently. Enzo sat near her, but not so close that she felt cornered. He had learned her rhythm. Movement made her tense, but quiet, patient presence loosened the knots inside her. Silence filled the space, not oppressive, but waiting. Finally, Enzo spoke. "We don't have to talk about what happened," he murmured. But the fear in your eyes, that bruise, they didn't come from nowhere. Her breath caught. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't interrogating. He was giving her the choice she'd never had. Amina stared into the lantern flame, letting its glow blur her vision. "It's complicated," she whispered. "Good," he said quietly. "Complicated means it's real." Her lips trembled. She hadn't expected that answer. She leaned back, breathing slowly, gathering pieces of a story she'd buried for years. "My father used to say," she began softly, "silence keeps peace." Enzo's jaw tensed. He said nothing. But he meant, don't embarrass the family. Don't speak of what's wrong. Don't reveal pain. Don't ask for help. She exhaled shakily, eyes glossing with unshed tears. "And my brother learned that lesson better than anyone." Enzo didn't move, didn't inhale too sharply. He knew sudden reactions would shut her down. Amina's fingers twisted nervously around the hem of her blouse. He wasn't always violent. At least not the throwing punches kind. Her voice trembled. But anger lived in him, like fire under skin. A deep breath. A slow exhale. He started controlling everything. My money. My movements. Who I spoke to. Who I didn't. And when he got angry, he'd grab my arm or shove me or... She stopped. Her voice broke. Enzo closed his eyes briefly, restraining the instinct to hit something, or someone. Her shoulders slumped. "I tried to leave once," she whispered. "I tried to run. But he found me before I made it to the bus station. He said if I left, he'd make sure no one else would ever want me." Enzo's breathing shifted. "And then he hit you," he said softly. She nodded, one tear slipping down her cheek. "Yes. But the bruise you saw, that wasn't the first time." Anger flashed hot in Enzo's veins. "Where is he now?" "Not here," she said quickly. "Not close. But he checks in. He shows up randomly. Threatens me when I try to gain independence." "And the bruise from yesterday?" Amina hesitated, her silence answering. "He found me outside the market," she whispered, voice splintering. "He said I was getting too comfortable living my own life. He grabbed me. He reminded me who had power." Enzo's throat tightened with a quiet, dangerous fury. "Amina," his voice strained but controlled. "You've been living in fear for that long." She nodded. "And you came to work every morning. Did your job. Smiled when needed." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "I didn't smile. I survived." That sentence broke something in him. He leaned forward a little, slow, visible, predictable, so she could see every inch of movement. "Look at me." She lifted her eyes. "You're not surviving anymore," he said. "You're living. And no one has the right to take that from you." Her lip quivered. Her chin trembled. But she didn't break. Instead, she asked quietly, "And what about you? What turned you into this?" She gestured at him softly. "The man who scares everyone but speaks so gently to me?" His brows lifted slightly. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was asking him to open up. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "No one ever asks about me," he said. "They only ask what I want, who I punish, who I protect. Not who I am." Amina waited patiently. This time, it was his turn to gather shadows. "When I was 15, Enzo said, his voice a shade lower, my father was killed in front of me. A betrayal by someone he trusted." He swallowed hard. "It taught me two things. Trust is dangerous, and protection is a debt I owe to those who can't defend themselves." Her breath softened. "And love," she whispered. "Where does that fit?" He looked at her, eyes suddenly raw. "I haven't let it fit anywhere," he admitted. "Because people like me don't get to have softness." Her eyebrows pinched gently. "Who told you that?" "The world." She shook her head slowly. "Then the world lied to both of us." His chest tightened. Her bravery, born from pain, stunned him. A lantern flickered between them, its flame bending and stretching like a heartbeat. Amina wiped her cheek. "I didn't mean to burden you with my past." "You didn't," he said immediately. "But you must think I'm weak." Amina. His voice silenced the thought. You're the strongest person in this entire house. She looked away, overwhelmed. Enzo leaned slightly closer, voice soft as breath. You walked into this mansion with old wounds, and still treated everyone with kindness. His eyes searched hers. That's strength. Not survival. Strength. The room fell silent again, but this silence felt different. Warm. Delicate. Safe. Amina exhaled slowly, almost in relief. Why does it hurt to hear that? Because no one has ever said it to you, he answered. She blinked, stunned by how true that felt. Thunder murmured faintly in the distance, softer now. The storm was moving on. You asked for my story, she said finally. I told you the truth. So, what do you want from me now? Enzo held her gaze. Nothing, he said. Then softer, more vulnerable than she thought possible. Accept the chance to show you that not everyone wants to hurt you. Her hand trembled. And in that trembling moment, in the quiet office in the dying storm, something between them shifted. Not love. Not yet. But something dangerously close to hope. Before we dive into this painful, revealing act, tell me in the comments, do you believe people can truly heal from their past, or do they only learn to live with it? The storm had passed, but its scent lingered, wet earth, cooled air, a freshness that seeped in through the tall windows of Enzo's office. The mansion was quiet now, hushed in the way a house becomes after something emotional has cracked open inside its walls. Amina sat back on the sofa, exhausted but lighter, as if speaking her truth had taken weight from her shoulders. She hadn't meant to open that door, but once she did, it felt impossible to close again. Enzo watched her quietly, leaning against the edge of his desk. Not intimidating. Not commanding. Just present. The lanterns threw soft light across him, warming the sharp lines of his face. You should rest, he murmured. She shook her head. I should work. There's still cleaning to do. Amina. His tone was gentle but absolute. You've been carrying the world on your back for too long. Sit a little longer. She hesitated. She wasn't used to slowing down. But her body was tired, and her mind was still heavy with memories she wished she hadn't revealed but somehow felt relieved to share. She lowered her eyes. I don't know how to rest, she admitted softly. Enzo softened. Maybe, he said with a slow exhale, that's something we learn together. Her breath caught. The idea of learning anything alongside him felt impossible, unreal, dangerous. But comforting. Dangerously comforting. Enzo walked to a drawer and pulled out a soft gray blanket. He unfolded it and approached her slowly, giving her time to flinch or reject. She didn't. He draped it gently over her shoulders. His fingers brushed her collarbone for barely a second. But that second pulsed through her. She inhaled sharply. Warm enough? He asked quietly. Yes, she whispered, even though she suddenly felt warm in ways the blanket couldn't explain. He stayed close, not touching, but near enough that her heartbeat took notice. Amina looked down at her hands, tangled together in her lap. Why are you being so kind? She whispered. He paused. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because saying the truth out loud might reveal too much. Amina, he said slowly, I know what it feels like to be alone in a room full of people. To have power, money, respect, and still feel unseen. She glanced up. You? Unseen? Yes, he said, voice dipping. People fear me. They obey me. But they don't see me. He held her gaze. Until you. Her breath stilled. He continued, softer now. You move through this house quietly, like you're afraid of taking up space. But every time you walk into a room, he swallowed, the air changes. Amina blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. Don't say things like that, she whispered. Why? Because I'll start believing them. That's exactly what I want, he said. She looked away, an ache blooming in her chest. You shouldn't want someone like me. That's where you're wrong. He crossed the room, pulling a small box from a shelf. A delicate, almost shy smile touched his lips. I want to show you something. He opened the box. Inside was a worn, folded piece of paper. My mother used to keep this in her pocket, he said. She called it her truth. He handed it to Amina. Her fingers hesitated before touching it, as if she feared hurting something precious. She unfolded the paper. It was a quote, handwritten in a looping, elegant script. "Even roses with thorns deserve gentle hands." Amina's eyes softened. "Your mother wrote this?" He nodded. "She used to tell me, 'Enzo, never think your scars make you unworthy of tenderness.'" The words lodged in her throat. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "Not beautiful," he corrected gently. "True." She traced the handwriting, imagining the kind of woman who could raise a man like him, powerful yet capable of softness when he chose to be. Enzo watched her, then spoke in a tone thick with honesty. "When I saw your bruise, I remembered that truth. That even the hurt deserved gentleness." Her eyes watered. "Do you really believe that?" Her voice quivered. "Yes," he said. Then quieter. "And I believe you've been denied gentleness your whole life." Her breath trembled. A tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Enzo reached out slowly, giving her time. When she didn't flinch, his thumb brushed the tear from her skin. "Tell me what you need right now," he murmured. She didn't know how to answer. No one had ever asked her that. So she whispered the first honest thing that came to her. "Just don't leave." He froze, not expecting vulnerability. Not expecting her to want his presence. His voice lowered, almost breaking. "I'm not going anywhere." Amina leaned back, allowing herself to breathe for the first time in years. He sat beside her, not touching, but close enough to feel his warmth, and for a long moment they said nothing. They didn't need words. The silence between them was no longer fear or tension. It was peace. New, fragile, trembling peace. The kind that felt like healing. The storm had completely passed. A soft breeze kissed the curtains, and the lantern flame swayed gently like a heartbeat. Amina dozed off slowly, her head dipping sideways. Before she could fall, Enzo extended his hand just enough for her head to rest on his shoulder instead of the cold leather. Not a command. Not a control. A silent offer. Half asleep she accepted, her cheek settling softly against him. Enzo's breath hitched. He stared at her, this brave, quiet woman who had survived more than she ever should have, and something inside him unraveled. Very carefully, he rested his cheek lightly against her hair. A rare smile touched his lips. And in that quiet, fragile moment, neither of them felt alone. Not anymore. Not tonight. Before we enter this fragile chapter, tell me in the comments, do you think two broken people can truly help heal one another? Or is that a dangerous combination? The next morning began with sunlight. Soft, golden, warm, a gentle contradiction to the storm of the night before. It slipped through the curtains of Enzo's office, landing on Amina's cheek where she still rested lightly against his shoulder. For a moment, Enzo didn't move. He simply watched her sleep. She looked peaceful, softer than he had ever seen her. No fear. No flinching. No weight on her shoulders. It stirred something tender, terrifyingly tender, inside him. But then she shifted, eyelids fluttering open. Her breath caught when she realized where she was. And who she was leaning on. She jolted away instantly, nearly knocking over the lantern on the table. I'm so sorry, sir, I didn't mean." "Amina, it's all right," he said gently. But she stood too quickly, panic crawling up her spine like wildfire. "I shouldn't. I fell asleep in your office. That's not professional. Please forgive me." Her voice shook. Her hands trembled. The safety from last night evaporated like it had never existed. Enzo rose slowly, hands visible, softening his voice. "You didn't do anything wrong." But Amina backed up another step. The old instincts, survival, guilt, fear, had returned with full force. "I need to go," she whispered, and rushed for the door. "Amina." But before he could reach her, she was gone. Amina cleaned the dining hall with movements too sharp, too fast. She needed something to do, something that grounded her back into the version of herself she understood. Invisible maid, silent worker, no expectations. Because last night, leaning on Enzo, hearing his voice soften, feeling safe, it was too much. Too dangerous. Too precious. She couldn't afford that kind of hope. As she wiped down the last glass, a familiar voice sliced through her chest like cold metal. "So this is where you've been hiding." Her blood froze. Her brother stood in the doorway. He was broader than she remembered, eyes hard, jaw tight, expression dripping with possessive fury. He looked around the mansion with disgust. A maid, he spat. Serving rich men. This is what you left your family for. Amina's heart hammered painfully. Please leave. You can't be here. Oh, I can be wherever I want. He stepped closer. Especially when my sister forgets who she belongs to. She flinched backward until her spine hit the wall. He smirked. You think because you work for a big name, you're safe? You think that man, that mafia king, is going to save you? Please. Her throat closed. How did you find me? She whispered. He shrugged casually. You never stopped buying groceries from that same store. You think hiding in a mansion changes anything? You're still mine to correct. Terror seized her. No, she breathed. Oh yes. He reached for her arm. But a voice cut him cleanly in half. Get your hand off her. Every molecule in the room froze. Amina gasped. Her brother turned slowly. Enzo Valenti stood in the doorway, still as stone, eyes dark as death, jaw clenched tightly enough to crack. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. His calm was more terrifying than violence. Her brother tried to act bold. Who are you to tell me? I said, Enzo repeated, stepping forward with lethal stillness, get your hand off her. Amina pressed her back against the wall, heart in her throat. Enzo, don't, please. But her brother laughed, mocking. So this is him? The big boss everyone fears? Looks like just another man. Enzo didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. He simply said, You hurt her. Her brother rolled his eyes. She's my sister. Family business. She knows her place. Her place, Enzo cut in quietly, is not under your fist. Her brother smirked. Oh? And whose place is she under? Yours. Amina gasped. Enzo's jaw flexed sharply. Her brother leaned closer, voice dripping venom. You think you can take what's mine? That was the final match. Enzo moved, but Amina grabbed his arm, desperate, terrified. No, she cried. Enzo, please, please don't hurt him. If you do, he'll come back worse. He'll bring others. Please, let him go. Her brother smirked triumphantly behind her. Enzo stared at her, the fear in her expression, the plea in her trembling hands, and something inside him cracked. She wasn't choosing her brother. She was choosing survival. But emotionally? It still tore him apart. Let me handle this, he whispered. I can't, she begged. Please. Just let him leave. Enzo's eyes darkened, wounded in a way he didn't show often. You're protecting him. No, she whispered, voice shaking. I'm protecting you. Silence. Deadly, painful silence. Her brother snorted. See? Even she knows you don't matter in this. Enzo's jaw clenched. But what really shattered him was this. Amina stepped away from him, standing between the two men, hands shaking, voice small. Please, everyone just leave me alone. Enzo inhaled sharply, hurt carving deep into his chest. Her brother smirked. You heard the lady. Get out of my house, Enzo said, voice deadly calm. Her brother left with a swagger, knowing Amina's fear protected him more than any guard. And when he was gone, Amina turned to Enzo with devastated eyes. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't drag you into my mess. Amina. I can't survive losing my job. I can't survive you getting hurt. I can't survive depending on someone who could walk away at any moment. Her voice cracked like glass. Enzo stepped closer. I'm not walking away. She shook her head, tears spilling. Yes, you will, she whispered. People always do. That's not fair, he said, voice breaking. It's not about fair, she cried. It's about reality. And then, the moment that shattered him completely. Amina, he said, voice raw, I care about you. Her breath caught. Her heart lunged. For one small second, everything paused. Then she whispered the worst words he'd ever heard. Maybe you shouldn't. Something inside Enzo broke, quietly, painfully. He stepped back, like her words had physically struck him. Amina squeezed her eyes shut, barely breathing. "I need space," she whispered. "Please." She turned away from him and walked out of the room, shoulders shaking, hand covering her mouth to muffle the sob she didn't want him to hear. Enzo stood alone, fists trembling, heart aching with a sharp, unfamiliar pain. The storm outside had passed. But inside the mansion? A new one had begun. Before we break open the hardest part of this story, tell me honestly in the comments, do you believe every relationship has a breaking point, or do you think some connections are strong enough to survive anything? Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the painful echoing kind that settles after a heart has cracked in two. Amina stayed in her small room for hours after the confrontation with her brother. She didn't sleep. She didn't clean. She didn't even cry at first. She just sat on the edge of her bed, hands knotted in her lap, staring at the floor. Every breath felt like it dragged a memory up from the darkest parts of her. Every heartbeat felt like a reminder of how close she had come to wanting something she had no right to want. The image of Enzo's face when she said, "Maybe you shouldn't care about me," wouldn't leave her mind. The hurt in his eyes. The way he stepped back, like her words had broken something inside him. Amina lifted her trembling hands to her face and finally let herself cry. "I didn't mean it," she whispered into her palms. "I didn't mean it at all." She cared. She cared more than she should. And that terrified her more than her brother ever had. He sat alone in his private office, lights now fully restored, though he kept them dim. He stared at the decanter of whiskey on his desk, but didn't touch it. He didn't want numbness. He wanted clarity. Yet clarity hurt. Her words repeated in his mind like a slow knife. "Maybe you shouldn't care about me." He leaned forward, pressing his elbows onto his knees, hands steepled over his mouth. He wasn't angry, he was wounded. And he hated how unfamiliar that feeling was. He wasn't used to being shut out. He wasn't used to caring about someone he couldn't protect. He wasn't used to wanting connection. But Amina had cracked open a part of him he thought had died with his father. And now that attachment had teeth. He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. "I won't lose her," he whispered into the empty room. Not to fear. Not to him. And not to herself. The mansion quieted. The staff retired. The city outside hummed with distant life. Amina slipped out of her room and went to the back garden. A single lantern lit the courtyard, casting soft golden light on the stone benches and trimmed hedges. She sat on the cold bench, hugging her arms around herself. The night breeze kissed her skin, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and jasmine. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to breathe without choking on guilt. But she also needed one thing she had never dared want. Someone who wouldn't give up on her. She whispered into the night, "I'm so tired of running." Her voice broke, thin and fragile. "I'm so tired of being afraid." A tear slipped down her cheek. "And I'm tired of pushing away the only person who has ever treated me like I mattered." Her chest heaved with quiet sobs, and she covered her face as the fear poured out of her in trembling waves. She didn't hear the footsteps at first. Not until a voice, soft but steady, broke the silence. "Amina." Her head lifted sharply. Enzo stood at the edge of the courtyard, not storming in, not demanding answers. Just standing there, watching her with a quiet, wounded tenderness. She quickly wiped her tears. "Sir." Enzo shook his head once. "Don't call me that. Not right now." Her breath faltered. He walked slowly to the bench, stopping a respectful distance away. "If you want me to leave," he said, voice low, "I will. But not until I say something I should have said earlier." Amina swallowed, staring at the ground. "You shouldn't be here." "Maybe not," Enzo murmured. "But you are." That made her look up. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Pain, longing, fear, something soft and trembling. Enzo took a slow breath. "You were right today," he said. "Your brother could retaliate. People could get hurt. And caring about you puts a target on your back, and on mine." Amina flinched, guilt twisting inside her. "But," Enzo continued, voice thickening, "even knowing all that, I don't regret caring." Her lips parted. "Enzo." "No," he stepped closer. "Let me finish." He kept his voice soft, but it carried the weight of truth. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. I'm not stepping back because you're afraid. You deserve someone who doesn't run at the first sign of trouble. Someone who chooses you even when you push them away. Amina inhaled shakily. I don't want to push you away, she whispered. I'm just scared. I know, he said. And I don't want to need someone, she added, tears forming again. Needing people has never ended well for me. Enzo moved closer, sitting down at the far end of the bench, leaving space but offering presence. You don't have to need me, he said softly. Just don't lie to yourself about what you feel. Her chin trembled. It's too much, she whispered. It's all too much. It doesn't have to be, he murmured. Not if we face it together. Silence wrapped around them again, but not the painful kind. This kind felt like a bridge being built plank by plank. Amina stared at her hands. Her voice was barely audible. What if I let you in, and you change your mind? Enzo shifted closer, slowly, carefully, until they were just a few inches apart. I won't. His voice shook, genuine, raw. I don't change my mind about the people I want to protect. She glanced up, eyes shimmering. And what am I to you? Enzo held her gaze. Then, with a voice thick like velvet and truth. Someone worth choosing. Her breath broke. A tear slipped down her cheek, and for the first time, she didn't hide it. Enzo, she whispered. He leaned forward slightly, not touching her, but offering the warmth of his presence. Amina. Give me one chance. Just one. To show you what it feels like to be safe. Her lips trembled. Her heart pounded. Her fears wrestled with something softer, something braver. Hope. Slowly, painfully, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Enzo closed his eyes briefly, relief washing through him. When he opened them, she was still there. Still looking at him. Still trembling, but no longer pushing him away. He extended a hand toward her, not demanding, not pulling, simply offering. She hesitated, then placed her hand gently in his. Warm, soft, real. And for both of them, that single touch felt like choosing a different life. Before we go deeper, when someone pushes you away out of fear, do you fight for them, or do you let them go? The mansion carried a new kind of quiet, not fearful, not tense, but expectant. Amina woke early, as she always did. But for the first time in years, she didn't wake with a knot of dread sitting on her chest. Instead, she woke with a memory. A hand holding hers. A voice saying, someone worth choosing. A warmth she had never known, fragile but real. She touched her cheek, not the bruise, but the place where safety had first taken root. Today felt like the start of something she had never believed she deserved. He stood near the tall glass doors, dressed simply in a dark shirt and tailored trousers, watching the driveway as if expecting a ghost to appear. He wasn't tense. He wasn't angry. He wasn't planning revenge. He was planning protection. Amina approached quietly, clutching a folder of morning tasks to ground herself. Enzo turned at the sound of her footsteps. Morning, he said gently. Her heart fluttered. Such a simple word, yet so new from him. Morning, she whispered. He stepped closer, slow, giving her space to retreat if she needed. She didn't retreat. You look rested, he observed softly. I feel different, she admitted. Good, he murmured. You should. A beat of silence passed, steady, safe, warm. Then he said, today we finish this. Her breath hitched. Meaning? Your brother. His jaw set with quiet resolve. He will never hurt you again. Her hands instinctively tightened around the folder. Enzo. He raised a hand, only halfway. Permission. Respect. No violence, he said firmly. Unless I'm forced. I promise you that. But he will not leave this threat hanging over your life. Amina's throat tightened. I don't want you getting hurt. Then trust me, he replied. Trust that I know how to protect what matters. Her chest thudded. What matters? He meant her. She exhaled shakily and nodded. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. Amina's brother returned to the mansion before noon, just as Enzo predicted. He strode through the gates like he owned the ground beneath his feet, shouting her name, demanding she come outside. But today, Amina didn't hide. She stood beside Enzo at the top of the stairs, not behind him, not cowering but beside him. Her brother froze at the sight. "What is this?" he barked. "You running around with this gangster? You think he'll save you?" Amina's fingers trembled, but her feet stayed steady. Enzo's voice was calm, colder than winter steel. "You will speak to her with respect." Her brother scoffed. "She's mine to correct." "No," Enzo cut in sharply. "She belongs to no one." Amina's heart twisted. No one had ever defended her like this. No one had ever spoken her worth out loud. Her brother stepped forward, sneering. "You think you scare me?" Enzo didn't blink. "You should. But that's not the point." He descended 2 steps, stopping within striking distance, then crossed his arms behind his back in a gesture of contained control. "No threats. No fights," Enzo said evenly. "Just reality." Her brother tensed. Enzo continued. "You come near her again, you'll face consequences. Legal. Personal. Financial. Choose your downfall, I don't care." Her brother spat on the ground. "You can't tell me what to do." Amina stepped forward then, surprising everyone, including herself. "Yes, he can," she said, voice trembling but strong. "And so can I." Her brother froze. Amina's hands shook, but her spine stayed straight. "I'm not your property," she said. "I'm not your punching bag. I'm not afraid of you anymore." He laughed harshly. "You think you're stronger because of him?" "No," she said. "Because of me." Her brother opened his mouth to lash back, but something in her eyes stopped him. For the first time, he saw not fear, but finality. Enzo stepped closer, his presence a silent wall of protection. "You heard her," he said softly. "Leave." Her brother hesitated, anger twisting his features. But Amina didn't look away. Didn't cower. Didn't bend. And something in him broke. With a sharp breath and a glare full of empty threats, he turned and stormed away, out of her life and off the Valenti grounds. For good. The gates slammed behind him. Amina's knees weakened, her breath stumbling out of her chest. But before she could fall, before panic could choke her, Enzo stepped behind her and caught her shoulders gently. "You did that," he murmured into her hair. "You saved yourself." She shuddered, overwhelmed. "He's gone," she whispered. "He's really gone." "Yes," he said softly. "And he's never coming back." Her tears fell freely now, not from fear but release. From relief. From reclaiming her own voice. And Enzo let her cry, holding her steady but giving her space to be strong. The mansion glowed warm with golden lights. Amina sat on a balcony overlooking the city, wrapped in a blanket, breathing easier than she had in years. Enzo approached quietly, carrying 2 mugs, tea for her, coffee for himself. She accepted the mug with a soft thank you. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence. Then she spoke. "Why didn't you let anger control you today?" Enzo took a slow sip. "Because your strength made violence unnecessary." She looked down, cheeks warming. "I felt braver with you beside me." "You were brave on your own," he corrected. She smiled, a real, soft, shaky smile. The first he'd ever seen on her. It nearly stopped his heart. Enzo set down his mug and turned to her fully. "Amina," he said quietly, "I meant what I told you last night. You deserve gentleness. You deserve protection. You deserve a life without fear." Her eyes glistened. "And you deserve to be seen," she whispered. He inhaled sharply. She continued, voice tender. "You've spent so long in power that you forgot what it meant to be cared for too." Enzo swallowed, throat tight. "You're the only person who speaks to me like that." She smiled again. "Maybe that's why it matters." They sat in silence, watching the evening lights flicker across the cityscape. The breeze was cool, gentle, peaceful. Amina's hand rested on the railing, and slowly, cautiously, Enzo placed his hand beside hers. Close enough to touch if she wanted. Far enough that she didn't feel forced. She looked at his hand, then at him, then slowly with a breath that felt like choosing life. She slid her fingers into his. Their hands intertwined. Warm. Steady. Equal. Enzo exhaled shakily, as if that single touch unraveled a lifetime of loneliness. Amina leaned her head softly against his shoulder. And for the first time in both their lives, they felt safe. They felt seen. They felt chosen. Not by fear. Not by circumstance. Not by survival. But by each other. Before we close this story, tell me in the comments, do you believe love can rewrite someone's entire life? Or do wounds always leave scars that never fully heal?
Thank you for staying with this story to the very end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you'll never miss the next story of healing, hope, and unexpected love.